So, this will be objective 26. We are going to find slope today, and we're going to talk about what slope is. Anybody have any ideas about what slope is? Like graphing, yes. We will start getting, you'll be very familiar with this graph paper. Okay, have no fear. If you need graph paper, I'll give it to you. We're going to do a little bit today. I'm just going to have you draw it by hand today on your notebook paper. When you really need the graph paper, I'll give you a piece of graph paper. So I agree. We're going to start graphing a little bit on the X and Y axis, a coordinate plane. Anybody else have any ideas about slope? No? No? Nope, nope. Anybody, have you ever heard of the word slope? Yeah. When? Oh, just a minute. I'm just talking about in real life. A hill. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. A ski slope. A hill. A mountain. Yes. Okay. Yes, literally. Okay, but this goes right with what we're doing, and you need to relate real world to what we're doing mathematically. Okay. If I have time, I'll show you a little video today that talks about slope and what it is. And anyway, have you different types of slope? Have you ever been skiing? I think ski slope. Okay, well, if you've never been skiing, you should still, you do realize that when you first start to ski, what kind of hill do you start on? Like almost a flat hill, right? But maybe just a little bit of a tilt to it. And then once you get good, you get on up to hills that are like steeper. And then when you get really good, you get to hills like this, okay? And so here's your story of the day. It relates to slope. So my first time skiing, I was pretty good because I was a dancer, and so I had pretty good balance and coordination. So I went down the bunny slope a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is easy. And so my friends that I was with, they were like, well, let's go on up to the mid-grade. So we went on up to the mid-grade, and so, you know, got a little steeper, and so I went a little faster, but I was doing okay because I had good balance, good coordination. And so then they took me up to, like, I don't know if it was a black diamond or a blue diamond, or it was really steep. And it was, like, straight down. And it had, like, I could even see some of the little mogul things, the things where you, like the little bump things, you know what I'm talking about, that they, like the fancy kind of skiing. Anyway, but this was, like, straight down. Anyway, I, like, had to slide down the whole thing on my butt because I was so scared, and I cried the whole way down. And, like, that was the end of my skiing career because I went too far too fast on my very first time skiing. Anyway, but the slope of a line is, slope describes how steep a line is and what direction, wanted to wake you up on a Monday morning, okay, what direction the line is going. You will be able to tell whether the line is going up, whether the line is going down, and how steep it is, okay? Whether it's steep or whether it's flat or whether it's in the middle, okay? It is the rate of change. It's how far, how many you rise up to how many you run across. And so we call this rise over run. Okay, we call this rise over run. What direction does, if bread rises or if the sun rises, what direction? So the top number goes up or down, and if you're running, what direction are you going? Side to side. So the top number, and it will be in fraction form. You will understand slope in fraction form. Okay? So that is your definition for slope. It's the rate of change. How many do you rise up for ever how many you run across? You go up so many and across so many. Okay. Any questions on that? It'll give you an idea of the direction of your line and how steep it is. Everybody have this? Okay. There are 4 types of slope. Okay, 4 types of slope that you need to know. Yeah, and you don't need to draw the little graphs. If I were you, I'd draw just, just X and Y axis like so. Does that make sense? All right, 4 types of slope. If your line is moving, and again, in America, we read from left to right. So if we start at the left side of the graph and we work to the right side, if our line is moving up, what kind of slope will it have? Increasing, or we say positive. Okay, so we will actually, in a little bit, we'll actually determine the slope is for every 2 I go up, I go over 1. Up 2 and over 1. Up 2 and over 1. Up 2 and over 1. Does that make sense? And so we'll actually figure out the number that goes with it. Does everybody understand that? But you better make sure if your line is traveling up that you give me a positive answer. Don't tell me that has a -2 slope. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. It will have a +2 slope, or a +1/2 slope, or a +3/4 slope. What does a 3/4 slope mean? For every 3 I move up, I go over 4. Up 3, over 4. Okay, rise and run. Then you have slopes that move down. As you start from the left and travel to the right, they're moving down. Those will have what kind of slope? Negative. And you should have learned this in elementary school when you were talking trends and correlations, positive trends and negative trends and no trends. Do you remember correlations?
I just remember positive and negative. Actually, I think she
Okay. Then you have lines that go like this. Okay. Can you ski a slope that is completely flat?
No.
You can't get from here to there if it's completely flat? You have to cross country ski. You have to push yourself. But if there's no hill to it, if it's completely flat, what would we say the slope is? How about 0? It has a 0 slope. Okay? Then you have slopes that look like this, straight up and down. Now tell me this. Can you ski a completely vertical hill? No, why not? If I tried to ski a hill like this, straight up and down, completely vertical, I'd be falling, right? Does that make sense? I wouldn't be skiing, I'd be falling. So in this case, I say a vertical line, it has an undefined slope. And this is how I remember the difference between 0 and undefined. A 0 slope is a number, and 0, you can ski it. You just have to push yourself, right? This one, undefined, means it has no definition. You can't even describe it because there's not even a hill there. Does that make sense? It's just like a cliff. Does that make sense? You'd be free falling. So that's how I remember it is you can't ski it, you can't define it, you can't give it a definition, you can't describe it, it is undefined. Okay? So those are your 4 types of slope. Any questions about those? Okay. So let's look at example 1. I'm going to do my best to draw this. Again, I'm not going to give you graph paper today because we're not going to do too many of these. Draw this the best you can. Okay? Just kind of sketch it out in your notes. Realize my smartboard is a smartboard and sometimes can even be a dumb board. So I will do the best I can as far as drawing my lines. And actually, not to brag, but I do pretty good for a straight line on a smartboard, I feel like. Any of your other teachers have issues with their smartboards? So sometimes they don't work very well. Okay. In order to find the slope, I want to find the slope. First of all, can you tell me about my answer? Will my answer be positive, negative, 0, or undefined? Positive. So again, don't tell me that this is a -1/2 slope. That makes no sense whatsoever. If you're telling me the answer is a negative whatever, that does not make sense for this. This should have a positive answer. Okay? In order to find slope, you need to find 2 clear points. Can someone name me a clear point? And this is our review for naming points. Nope. I hear 0, 1. Okay, and it's okay. Tommy was with me last year. Every point has two numbers. What are they? One is a X and one is a Y. It's a coordinate point, right? The X, now here's the thing that you're going to have to keep straight. When you name points, what direction do you go? And I'm going to go back to Miss Bauer's example because it's a good example. You got to go down the runway before you go into the air. Do y'all remember that? Taylor does. Okay. Where's my Wawanians? Okay. Do y'all remember that? You got to go down. She said if you're in an airplane, if you're naming a point, okay, you've got to go down the runway. You've got to go this way first and then up into the air. Okay? Does that make sense? So you go X and then Y. So if Tommy named that point 0, 1, how many to the right or left did he go? 0, and then he went up 1. Okay? We'll talk about slope in a minute because what does slope do? If naming goes this way and then this way, slope is rise over run. It's backwards. Okay? You got to go up the elevator. Yes. Okay, we'll talk that in a minute. Okay, can someone name me a second point? Because I got to have another one. 3, 2. So we're going to go down the runway, 1, 2, 3, and then up 2. Just as a review, this is 3D. And you don't need to know those points. I'm just reviewing with you how to name points. Okay, that's a 7th grade skill, right? Okay, just reviewing with you how to name points. You all drew the pictures, right, and made the little elephants and the cats and the this and the that. Elephants, cats. You drew some type of picture. Bunny rabbits. You plotted points and you connected them and you drew a picture. Thank you. Okay, so I might print some of those off and give them to you for extra credit so you can do them. If you've never had the experience of drawing a bunny rabbit or a cat or something, I'll find something for you. Okay, here we go. Just as a review, can someone name me that point?
0, 0.
-3, 0. Just reviewing with you. If you travel to the right, it is. If you travel to the left, it is. If you travel up, it is. If you travel down, it is negative. Okay, so but I don't need those points. I only need 2. Okay, 2 clear points. So I'm using these 2 points right here. Now, slope is backwards from naming points. It is rise over run. So if you're finding slope, here's what I say. It doesn't matter which one you start at. Which one do y'all want to start at? 0, 1 or 3, 2? 0, 1. Okay. What you are going to do is you are going to get in an elevator. Okay? So when you're doing slope, you're going to get in an elevator. What direction does an elevator go? It either goes up or it goes down, right? You press the button and you either go up a couple floors or you go down a couple floors. So how many floors do I need to go up to reach this floor? I need to go up 1 floor. And if I go up 1 floor, that's +1. Does that make sense? Okay, if I went down, it would have been -1. Okay, then when you get out on your floor, you either go to the right or go to the left, right? Okay, so we're going to get in an elevator and we're going to go up 1 floor and then we're going to travel to the right 1, 2, 3. And if I'm going to the right, that is a +3. Then if you need to reduce it, reduce it. This one doesn't. What's the slope? 1/3. Okay, and what does that mean to us? That means for every 1 we go up, we travel over 3. Up 1, over 3. Up 1, over 3. Does that make sense?
Tommy told me that like way before.
Would it? It's okay.
Got it.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel good though? Yeah. Okay. All right. I promised him when we decided to take it again, I said this will be easy for you. You know, it'll be good. It'll be easy. What if I'd started here? Would it have been mattered? What if I'd gone down 1? What does that mean? -1 and then traveled to the left 1, 2, 3. Left 3 would have been negative 3. Is that still the same thing as that? A negative divided by a negative is a positive. So it doesn't matter what two points you pick. What if I had picked this point? Whoops, I don't want that. Let's try this. This point and this point. Would have been okay?
Yeah.
Any two clear points. Watch. Up 2 is positive 2, and then right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Does that reduce to that?
Yeah.
Yes. So what do we know about picking the 2 points that are closest to each other? They'll be simplified, and you will not have to reduce. So the best thing is to pick 2 that are closest to each other. But it doesn't matter. Slope on a straight line is always consistent. What does that mean? From point to point to point to point to point, it will be the same. Up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3. Do you understand? Same thing like this. Negative 1, negative 3. Negative 1, negative 3. Negative 1, negative 3. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter what 2 points you pick. And it doesn't matter which one you start at. You only need to pick 2 and go from there. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Let's look at a second one. See what I can do with my drawings here. Okay, not too bad. All right, in order to find slope, I need how many clear points? 2. Who can name me one clear point? Somebody different. Raise your hand. Name me one clear point up there. Go, Taylor. 0 up 2. Very good. That point is 0 up 2. Right or left 0, up 2. Okay? Name me one more clear point, Shani. Positive 1, negative 1. Go down the runway, positive 1, and then this one crashed, obviously, into the ground, negative 1. Maybe that's flight 370. I sure hope they find that soon, but anyway. Okay, does everybody understand what I mean going down the runway? And that's just something that my students over the years, I believe that's a Miss Bowers trick from Woolwine, so that's just something. If you have a better way to remember it, that's fine by you. Okay, now, does it matter which point I start at to find slope? No. No, so pick one. Which point, Haley, do you want to start at? 0, 2. Okay, so let's get in our elevator. Where are we going to get to this point?
Down.
We're going to go down 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? And when you get in the point, don't count the point. Count when you travel to the first line. We have now traveled 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines. And if I'm moving down 3, what does that mean? Negative 3. And then I'm traveling to the right 1. To the right 1 means positive 1. So reduce that for me. What's the slope? Negative 3. Does it make sense that this slope is negative? Why does it make sense that this slope is negative? Because from left to right, it's traveling down. Are we okay over there?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it have mattered had I chosen other points?
No.
No. It would have been the same thing. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Here we go. You try this one on your own. Try that one on your own. What's different about it before I get you started? What did I not do? I didn't put any points. I will tell you on your SOL, they will not have points on there for you. You've got to find 2 clear points. What are clear points? Something you can see, something that's not in the middle. Is that a clear point right here? No, you need to see that it is exactly over this many and up this many, and it meets at a corner. Does that make sense? So find me 2 clear points and then find me the slope. Does anybody want to offer me an answer? Somebody that has not talked to me today. Girl Taylor. She thinks 1. Agree or disagree, Sean?
Disagree?
Disagree? What does Sean get?
I got 1/2.
1/2? Okay, what does Wesley think? Okay, what does Levi think? You got -1? Let me ask you this. Is our graph moving up or is it moving down? From left to right. Start at the left. Because in America, we read from left to right. So it's moving in an upward direction. So what do we know about our slope? It should be positive. So at least you can get there, because if it asks on the SOL, what is the slope of this line, and you have a line that goes like this, and 2 of your answers are negative and 2 of your answers are positive, what can you do with the negatives? Cross them out. Bam, bam. It's got to have a positive answer because it's a positive slope. That's like the one thing that kills me on like the tests that I give, and I say, what's the slope of this line? And people try to tell me it's a negative slope, and I'm like, really? You know what I mean? So make sure it has a positive, okay? Now, it's okay for today. We're just learning. But come test day, you better know that, okay? It's got a positive slope. All right, Wesley, Mr. I don't know. I'm going to help you know. Find me 1 clear point. You can't see at all where it's crossing? Okay. How about you pay attention to this one? I'm going to ask you on the next one. Okay? Sean, find me 1 clear point.
0, 2.
0 up 2. Left or right 0 and up 2. Everybody agreed that's a clear point right there? Yeah. All right, Sean, what other clear point did you use?
1, 3.
To the right 1 and up 3. Everybody agree? Clear points? Anybody use different points than that? Is that okay? What did Shamar use? -1, 1. Perfect. Anybody else? Use a different point. Bradley, what did you use? -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then -2. Everybody agree that's a clear point? Yes, I agree. Okay. So there's lots of points you could have used. Okay, but these 2 are fine. So here we go. Pick one of them. Where am I traveling? Get in your elevator and go up 1 and then over 1. So reduce that. What's the slope? 1. Okay, and it's positive. Up 1 was positive. Right 1 was positive. Positive over positive is positive. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, let's try again until we can figure out that we get the same. How many did not get 1 on that one? Okay, what did you have, Grace? Okay, do you understand? Okay, do the best you can. You just have to reduce your answer. Okay. Brooks' question said, what if you choose, let's choose the one Bradley chose, and let's choose maybe that one. Would that be okay? And so if you get in your elevator, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What does that reduce to? Does that make sense? The best thing to do, though, is to choose 2 points that are close and you won't have to reduce. Okay? Not that reducing is a hard thing. Okay? All right. Let's let you try this one again. See what we can do. Oh, this is going to be bad. I'm trying to draw it without drawing points, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. All right. Try that. All right. Let's hear some answers from somebody that has not talked to me today. How about Kathleen? What does Kathleen think? You don't have any thoughts whatsoever. Okay, how about Jesse? -1/4. What does Brooklyn think? Okay, Jimmy? 4/-1. Okay. Is that what Sean likes? 4/-1. What does Wesley think? No. You can. You got -4. Okay. Let me caution you to really make sure that your top number is how many you went up or down, and your bottom number is how many you went across. Okay? What's Cheney thinking now? Well, what do you think about your answer? Is it right? Why not? Yeah, if you did -4/1, and anybody else that did that, y'all are running and over rising. Y'all are doing it backwards. Okay? All right, Wesley, this one's yours. Give me one clear point. 1, 1, to the right 1 and up 1. I agree. Give me one more clear point. 5, 0. Perfect. Okay, so there's your 2 points. It does not matter which one you start at. Pick one to start at. Which one you want to start at? 1, 1. Okay, so here, I need you guys, you got to think. Step in. We've all been in an elevator, right? When you find slope, you got to step in your elevator. Push a button. Where are we traveling to get to this point? Down 1. And if we go down 1, this is your top number. Down 1 means -1. Okay? And then we are now going to travel where, Wes? To the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we're traveling to the right 4, +4. So who was right? Jesse. -1/4. Okay? Had it been different if you had gone up 1 and left 4? Up 1 would have been +1. Left 4 would have been -4. Is that the same thing? We've talked about that before. It doesn't matter if the negative is in the top or but not both. Why couldn't it be both? Because then it would be a positive. Okay? It either goes in the top or the bottom, but not both. Okay? Where do people mess up on this? They get the rise and the run backwards, because I agree, it's hard. When you name points, and you're so used to 5th, 6th, 7th grade naming X's and Y's, and you're so used to going right or left first and then up or down, you have to remember that slope is backwards. So whether you think rise and run, or whether you think getting in an elevator, whatever works for you, make it work for you. Okay, does that make sense? And again, it doesn't matter where you start. Pick 2 clear points, pick one of them, and then decide how many you move up or down for how many move right or left. Okay? Now, let me go back for just a second. Okay? How many of you do not want to graph these by hand every single time? Okay. There is an algebraic way to do it without having to graph. Now tell me, if this point is 1, 1, and this point is 5, 0, can you tell me, what do I do with, first of all, X's move what direction? Left and right, and Y's move up and down. Can you tell me what I could do with my Y coordinates?
Yeah, you see what you have to get like.
Yeah, if I'm here and I want to find the distance between here, what do I do with these measurements? I take them and subtract them. Oh, does that make sense? And then if I wanted to see the distance between here and here, I can take the coordinates, the x's, and take them and say, subtract them, and it'll tell me the distance between there. Does that make sense? And so basically we have this formula. It's called the slope formula. And it should make sense. And I'm going to explain to you. You will need to memorize this. It is not on your formula sheet. Okay? Your formula sheet gives you these grand formulas of area, perimeter, circumference. Tell me, when's the last time in Algebra 1 that we found area, perimeter, and circumference? Never. And so what's your formula sheet for? Yeah, you probably don't need very much. The formulas we actually use in Algebra 1 will not be on there. But if you can remember, think CS brain logically. Hey, if I want to know how far it is this way, I can take the y coordinates. Now, why are the y's on top? Because it's rise. Isn't that your y coordinates? Over run. Does that make sense? Over your x coordinates. And we take them and we subtract them. Everybody says, what's them little 2's and 1's, Miss Corns? Well, don't you have two y's? So you can't just say take the y and subtract the y and then take the x and subtract the x. Which x and which y? Does that make sense? So basically this says y sub 2, meaning your second y point, and subtract your first y point. Does that make sense? And then if you started with your second y point, you've got to start with the same x point on the bottom and subtract the first x point. It's just labeling them, saying here's your first x and y, and here's your second x and y. Here's your first point, and here's your second point. Okay, these are called subscripts. Okay, so m equals, and m always means slope. So slope, your slope, is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Okay? All right, so let's put it into use. So I give you these 2 points, and you don't want to graph. How many don't want to graph? Could you graph them and count the blocks up and over? How many actually got the graphing and were kind of okay with the graphing? Yeah, okay, so if you want to graph, you could, but a lot of us want to use the formula. So number 1, write your formula down. The more times we write it down, the more times we will remember it. So I recommend, and on your homework, I want to see you writing your formula down. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do you trust me by now?
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. I would go ahead and draw your fraction bar. And I would go ahead and put in your subtractions. Where did the subtractions come from? The formula, right? So then all you have to do is fill in the coordinates. Does that make sense? Okay, now I'm not going to do all of this. The first one, I'm not going to draw all those blanks every time, but the first one, it will matter. It does not matter which one is your first point and which one is your second point. Probably the easiest thing for you to do is just to label. This is x sub 1 and this is y sub 1. That's your first point. Does it matter which one? Could have the other one been your first point? Yeah, it don't matter. And then I'll say that this is my second x and this is my second y. You need to label which one is your first x and which one is your first y. Does that make sense? Here's your first point and here's your second point. That way you know you can't just stick x's and y's everywhere, because what will happen? You'll get confused and it won't be right, because you couldn't do like it'll be wrong, because if you did 8 minus 4 and then some of you did 4 minus 8, it ain't going to work, because we know that 8 minus 4 is 4 and 4 minus 8 is negative 4. It's going to get messed up. Okay, so you got to know which one's your first point. So which one is my first y? Or excuse me, my second y. Y sub 2. Sorry. So I'm going to plug an 8 in right there. Subtracting, which one is my first y? So I'm going to do 8 minus 4. Okay. Which one is my second x? Now, again, once you get used to this, guys, if I started with this y on top, then on the bottom, I've got to start with the same x from that same point. Does that make sense? 3, and I've got to subtract the 5. Okay, and then we'll work it out. 8 minus 4 is 4. 3 minus 5 is, and then I reduce. What's the slope? -2. Okay, Jonathan, wake up. All right, your slope is -2. So tell me this. Tell me about your line. Tell me what direction, Levi, it's going in. Very good. We know it's going down. How do you know it's going down? Because it's a negative. Tell me this. At what rate is it going down? For every 2 I go down, I travel where? Where over? Really, this way? If I go negative down, then I got to go positive 1, right? Because a negative over positive would be a negative. I can't go negative, negative, because then it would be a positive slope. -2, right 1. -2, right 1. -2, right 1. So tell me about this line. Is it steep, flat, or in the middle?
In the middle.
Down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. I think it's steep-ish. It's not horribly steep, but more than I would want to ski. Does that make sense? You're traveling bigger steps down over 1. Bigger steps down 2 over 1. Bigger steps down 2 over 1. Does that make sense? Yes? So I would say that that is a fairly steep line. Okay? All right, let's look at another one. Write your formula down. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Again, it does not matter which one is your first point and which one is your second point. Okay? My advice to you is what? Draw your and fill in the negatives, the subtraction signs. So then you just have to fill in your x's. So it does not matter to me, which one you pick. Which y do you want to pick? -3. This one, right here. Okay, that's fine. You could have picked 4, and I'll show you in a minute. I'll do the 4 in a different color, and I'll show you that it's going to give you the same answer. So if I plug in -3 for my y sub 2, what am I going to subtract? What's the y sub 1? What's 4? You got to subtract y minus y. Okay, again, where might people get confused? Notice we're using the last numbers first. So do you understand that some people might put the x's in on top because those come first?
Yeah.
Make sure you put the y's in first. Now, if I started with -3 on the top, what do I have to start with on the bottom? The 2. You got to start with the same point. It will not work out right if you don't. So if I start with the 2, then that means I'm going to be subtracting -3. And Sean says, double negative, Miss Corns. Yeah, how's this double negative? Where does this subtraction come from? The formula, where does that one come from? The actual coordinate, right? Okay, so is this double negative up here? No. -3 minus 4? -7, very good. Y'all glad we're not copy changing? You understand now? Remember back in day 1 when y'all subtracted and I told you not to do that? Because now we know better, right? And then this becomes 2 plus 3, which is 5. So my slope is -7 over 5. Tell me about your line. What direction is it going? Down. At what rate? For every 7 I move down over which way? To the right 5. Down 7, right 5. Is this a steep, flat, or in the middle? In the middle. I'd say in the middle. Because you're about moving the same distance down as you are this way, right? Does that make sense? It's pretty, it's almost the same. Maybe a little on the steeper side because the steeper's bigger than the runner. Okay? All right. Do you want to attempt this one on your own? Sure. Okay. to offer me an answer. Dylan. 1 over negative 2. So could I say negative 1/2? That'd be okay?
Yeah.
Do we agree?
Yeah.
You just agreeing just to agree?
No, I got the same answer.
You sure?
Yeah.
What did Bradley get? Can you reduce that? And so that would be negative 4 or 3? Okay, so negative 4. Always reduce. If you don't reduce, I'll take off half credit, okay, on your worksheet that you're going to get today. Okay, Grace, you get something different? What'd you get? It's okay. I don't care. Negative 1/4. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so let's see what we get. Does not matter where we start. Jake, where'd you start? You got to start with a y. You can't start with an x, obviously, right? Y's are on top. So, positive 4. Okay, so that works. So, go back. Let's start with the positive 4. And so, if I start with 4, then I will subtract what? Subtract 2. Okay? Then, if I started with the 4, then I must start with the negative 6. You've got to start with the same point. Negative 6. What's something that I'm doing every time so I make sure I start with the same point? I'm circling it and drawing a line, and I'm going to subtract negative 2. Again, hint, 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 I can't express this enough. How many of you drew your fraction bar and your subtractions before you filled in your numbers? How many didn't? I caution you, because if not, people will see 4 and negative 2 and think 4 minus 2 and think 2. Does that make sense? And that ain't going to work. So here we go. This actually is going to be double negative. So 4 minus 2 is 2. Negative 6 plus 2. And if we reduce it, negative 1/2. Okay? If you didn't get it, do you know where you went wrong? Okay? You've got to be cautious, careful, conscientious with your signs. Okay? How you feeling, Grace? Just simple mistake? Okay? Did anybody start with this point, or all of you starting with the second point? Okay, so can I just show you that you could start with the first point? Because what I do is I look and I'd say, do I want to say 4 minus 2, 2 minus, like I look at what I'm subtracting and think what's easier. But I could have started with this y and subtract the other y, subtract 4. If I started, though, with that 2, what do I have to start with on the bottom? The negative 2, and subtract the negative 6. Now check this out, double negative. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 6 is positive 4. What does it reduce to? Do you understand? It doesn't matter which point you start with. The only thing that does make, there's a couple things. You have to start with the y's on top and the x's on the bottom. Okay, I see some people that start with x's on top and y's on bottom, which I understand because that's what comes first and that's what they see, but that's not right. Okay, and the other thing is if you start with a particular y, then on the bottom you have to start with the corresponding x that goes with it. Okay, do you understand? Yes? Okay, try that one on your own one more time. I think I got maybe one more after this. Well, we hadn't quite done everything yet. Every example has purpose, I promise. This one's yours. You got it? I'm almost finished. Give me like 2 seconds and then you can stretch. I know it's cloudy, rainy day, and it's dark, and my PowerPoint's real bright though.
Especially when you're
All right, Jonathan. What do you think?
I got this.
Tell me. Talk me through it. Here we go. What am I going to start with? Which one? This one or that one? Okay. Listen, please. And we're going to subtract what? 7. Very good. Okay. And so if I started with that 7, what do I have to start with on the bottom? -2. Does that make sense? You got to start with the corresponding and subtract. Yeah. Subtract 6. Okay. So 7 minus 7 is 0. -2 minus 8, or minus 6 is -8. -8. Does that make sense? It's not headless. 0 is a number. It's not headless. Anybody have any ideas about what shape this line is, or what direction this line is, or? It's flat. And then here's the thing. 0 divided by -8, if you put it in your calculator, I like what Brooke says. Let's put it in our calculator. Let's try it. If you do 0 divided by -8, you get 0. So I'm going to tell you, if you leave this as your answer, I will count half credit, or I might even count it all the way wrong. Because I don't know if you know what this is. This is 0, and this is a flat line. That is what, if you graph these 2 points. And if you don't know on the test, what can you do? Can you graph those 2 points? Over 6 and up 7. Left -2 and up 7. Ba-boom, flat. Graph it. Look at it. Does that make sense? Okay, it's a 0 slope. 0 slope. So, last one, I promise. Tomorrow question? Did you start with the other point? Yeah, and that's fine. If you started with the first point, you would have gotten 0 over 8. Still, though, when you simplify it, it's 0. So. The more times you write the formula, the more times you will remember it. And I recommend you write it every time because it is not on your formula sheet. So, what do you think, Jonathan? Tell me what to plug in. -8 minus 4. Okay. How many are circling and drawing lines with me? I recommend you do it. 6 minus 6. Okay, very good. Okay, so -8 minus 4 is -12. If you did the other point, you would have gotten +12. Does that make sense? Okay. And 6 minus 6 is 0. Is that the same thing? Put it in your calculator. I like Brooke. Brooke says, let's put it in our calculator and let's try it. Put in -12 divided by 0. Error. It says error. You cannot divide by 0. That's what it says, divide by 0. Okay? You cannot divide by 0. If I put 6 of y'all up here and I said split them into 0 groups, you can't take 6 people and make 0 groups. Does that make sense? You can't do it. So, can anybody tell me about the shape of this line? It's up and down. It's undefined. And this is complimentary of Miss Hope Perry. She was a teacher here. A lot of you remember Nate, her son, who, but they go to Bassett now. This is what she used to say. If the 0 is under the fraction bar, then it is undefined. Does that make sense? Undefined. If it's underneath, it's undefined. You like it? Under. If 0 is under the fraction bar, it is undefined. Okay? And it is, if you plotted those, over 6 and up 4, over 6 and down 8, and connected them, it would be a vertical line. Okay, do you understand? When 0 is in the numerator, you can do that. Put in your calculator. It'll give you 0. That's a flat line. When 0 is in the denominator, when it's under the fraction bar, it's undefined. Okay? I didn't tell y'all. It's new. All right. I think I'm going to skip that.